The rain hadn't let up all evening. It came down in heavy sheets, blurring the glowing tail lights ahead of her into red smudges, washing the world into silver and black. Wine hunched closer to the wheel, the wipers slashing back and forth at full speed but barely keeping pace. She was born tired, the kind of tired that made her eyes sting and her thoughts slow. Her entire body ached with the weight of a day that refused to end. Her boss voice still echoed in her head from earlier. "You need to stop missing deadlines, Wine. We can't afford it." She had swallowed back her retorts, forced herself to nod, and walked out his office with her jaw clenched so tightly she would given herself a headache. Now driving home in storm, she felt like that headache pulsing at her temples. Almost home, just 20 more minutes, then bed. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder with a new message, probably from Maya, her best friend, who checked in whenever she knew Wine worked late. Wine's eyes flickered towards it. Just for a second, that second was all it took. The tires lost traction on a curve slicked with rain. The steering wheel jerked violently, her breath catching as the car fish-tailed. No, no, no! The strike of rubber tore through the night as the vehicle spun. Metal collided with the guardrail, glass exploded, and pain slowed like lightning across her body as the airbag deployed. The sound, the impact, and the smell of burned rubber, it all crashed into her senses in one violent blur. Then silence. Her head lowered against the seat. Warmth trickled down her forehead into the eye. Everything felt distant, muffled. She thought she heard sirens somewhere far away, but she couldn't be sure. Her last coherent thought before the darkness pulled her under was a strangely absurd one. "I forgot to buy milk again." The paramedics arrived within minutes, rain still hammering down as their flashing lights painted the slick road in red and blue. "She's alive," one confirmed, pressing fingers to Wine's neck. "Pulse is weak but steady." They moved quickly, strapping her to a board, lifting her into the ambulance. One of them fished her phone from the wreck, the screen spiderweb with cracks but still working. The emergency contact screen popped up, and the paramedic frowned. "Emergency contact, Jungkook." He glanced at his partner. "Boyfriend? Ex maybe, doesn't matter, call him." The phone rang. Across the town, Jungkook sat in the near-empty office of his architecture firm. His desk was cluttered with scattered drafts and coffee-stained notes, but he wasn't working. He hadn't been working for hours. His concentration had slipped sometime around 8, and he had been staring blankly at the same sketch since then. He sighed and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He needed to go home, needed sleep. That's when his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, blocked caller ID. He almost ignored it, but something compelled him to swipe. "Hello?" His voice was rough with fatigue. "Is this Jungkook?" "Yes." "This is County General Hospital. You are listed as the emergency contact for Miss Wine." Every nerve in his body went rigid. "What?" "She's been in a car accident. She is stable but unconscious. We need someone here to authorize treatment if necessary. Can you come?" The world narrowed to a pinpoint. He heard the rest of the words: stable, unconscious, authorized, but they tangled together in his head. Wine. He hadn't heard her name spoken aloud in almost a year, not since their breakup. It landed like a punch, hollowing his chest. "Yeah," he heard himself say, his voice distant. "I will be there. I am on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur. The rain smeared across the windshield, but he barely noticed. His thoughts spun too fast, chasing one another in frantic circles. Why was he still her emergency contact? Why hadn't he changed it? She had friends, family, why him? And yet, beneath the confusion, one truth pulsed louder than anything. He had to get her. Images of her assaulted him as he drove. Vine, laughing in their old apartment, curled up with a blanket too big for her shoulders. Vine on the morning they had gone hiking, hair pulled back messily, eyes shining when they reached the summit. Vine during their last fight, her face pale with anger, her voice breaking when she told him to leave. He had left, and he hadn't seen her since. Now she was lying in a hospital bed somewhere, and they called him. Him. The hospital lobby was bright and sterile, its antiseptic scent wrapping around him as he pushed through the sliding doors. His shoes squeaked on the polished tiles, his chest felt too tight to breathe. He reached the front desk in 3 long strides. Jungkook, he said, breathless. I got a call about Vine. She was in an accident. The nurse nodded with a practiced calm. Yes, Mr. Jungkook, she is in trauma room there right now. They are finishing scans. A doctor will update you shortly. Please wait over there. Jungkook's legs carried him to the waiting chairs, though he barely felt them. The room was dotted with other people, families whispering anxiously, a child crying softly in his mother's lap. The television in the corner murmuring about the weather. Jungkook sat on the edge of his seat, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. Minutes passed like hours. He couldn't stop picturing her lying there, pale, hurt. He couldn't stop remembering the night they broke up, her voice, her tears, the silence afterward. What if she didn't wake up? What if his last memory of her was the last fight? His throat tightened. Finally, a doctor in blue scrubs approached. Mr. Jungkook? Jungkook shot to his feet. Yes, how is she? The doctor's voice was calm, reassuring. She is stable. She suffered a concussion, some cuts and bruises, but no major internal injuries. We are keeping her for observation overnight. She hasn't regained consciousness yet, but her vitals are strong. Relief hit Jungkook so hard his knees almost gave out. He pressed a hand to his face, inhaling shakily. Thank God. You can see her now, the doctor added. Room 213. The door creaked open softly as he entered. The room was dim, the only light coming from a monitor beside the bed. Its green light pulsing steadily. Vine lay motionless against the white sheets, her dark hair tangled around her face. A bandage covered her forehead, a bruise already blooming beneath her eye. Her right arm was hooked to an IV, the plastic tubbing snaking to a bag above her. Jungkook froze. An year had passed since he had last seen her, but it felt like only yesterday. She looked both exactly the same and heartbreakingly different. He stepped closer, his chest tight. Vine, he whispered, though she couldn't hear. His eyes burned, memories assaulted him, the way she used to nudge him awake when he snored, the way she smelled faintly of lavender, the warmth of her hand in his hair. And now she was here, fragile and hurt, and he didn't know what to do. He pulled a chair beside her bed and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. For a long time, he just watched her breathe. Finally, he whispered, I don't know why I am still here, but I am the only one they called. But I'm here. I'm not leaving. He rested his hand carefully near hers, close enough to touch but not quite daring to. His throat ached with the words he had never said. I have missed you, he murmured, voice breaking, more than I wanted to admit. The monitor beeped steadily, rain tapped softly against the window, and Jungkook, the man she had once loved and lost, sat vigil by her side, waiting for her to open her eyes. The first thing Vine registered was sound when she opened her eyes. A steady beeping, soft, rhythmic, mechanical. It felt like it was coming from a great distance, echoing in her skull. She floated somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, her body heavy as stone, her mind sluggish. Then came the smell, antiseptic, sterile, familiar in the way that triggered a ripple of unease through her foggy thoughts. Hospital. Her throat felt raw when she tried to swallow. She became aware of the dryness in her mouth, the soreness along her temple, the dull ache in her ribs. Slowly, painfully, she forced her eyelids to open. The room came into focus in fragments. White ceiling tiles, a curtain partially drawn, the faint hum of machines, and him, Jungkook. He sat in a chair beside her bed, head bowed, one hand curled loosely near hers on the sheet. His hair was longer than she remembered, messier. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, but the sight of him was unmistakable, a shock to her system that jolted her fully awake. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. She blinked, expecting the image to dissolve. But he remained, solid and real, breathing slowly in the dim light. Her chest tightened. What was he doing here? Her lips moved, her voice rasping like sandpaper. Jungkook? His head snapped up, his eyes those same storm grey eyes she used to get lost in met hers. Relief flooded his face so fiercely it made her heart leap. Wine, he whispered. He leaned closer, his voice unsteady. You are awake. She stared at him, trying to piece together the fragments of memory, the rain, the curve of the road, the sound of shattering glass, then nothing. What happened? She croaked. You were in an accident. His voice was gentle, careful, as though afraid she might break if he spoke too loudly. But you are okay. Concussion, some cuts and bruises. The doctor said you will be fine. She let out a shaky breath, sinking back against the pillows. Relief mingled with disorientation. And then, sharp and bewildering, came the question. Why are you here? Jungkook flinched almost imperceptibly, but she saw it. His gaze flickered away for a moment before returning to hers. They called me, he said simply, her brow furrowed. Called you? You still had me listed as your emergency contact. The words hit her like ice water. She turned her face toward the ceiling, blinking hard. Of course. She meant to change it 100 times. Every time she had filled out some form at the clinic or updated her records. She had told herself she would erase his name, replace it with Maya's or her parents'. But somehow she never did. And now here he was. I forgot, she whispered, heat creeping up her neck. Jungkook's lips curved in something between a smile and grimace. Yeah, I figured. Silence stretched between them, thick and awkward. The beeping of the monitor filled the space where words should have been. Finally, Vine dared to look at him again. He looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes, his posture tense, but there was something else there too, something softer. Concern, memories rose unbidden, sharp and painful. The last night they were together, the argument. Flashback. You never listened, Jungkook. Her voice had cracked, frustration spilling over like water from a too full glass. You are so consumed with your work, with your plans, you don't even see me anymore. He had shot back, angry, defensive. That's not fair. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Our future or yours? She demanded, tears blurred her vision. Because I don't think you even know what I want anymore. The silence that followed had been suffocating, and then the words she couldn't take back. Maybe we shouldn't be together. The way his face had crumpled just for an instant before she shut down. Cold and unreadable, the slam of the door, the hollow emptiness afterward. Wine blinked back tears, forcing herself into the present. She didn't want to think about that night, not now. You didn't have to come, she said softly, though part of her was glad he had. Yes, I did. He replied immediately. His tone was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They glistened, fierce and raw. They called me, and you were hurt. I wasn't going to stay home. Something in her chest twisted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Words tangled in her throat. Before she could respond, the door opened and a nurse entered, brisk and efficient. Miss Vine, good to see you awake. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, she muttered, her voice hoarse. The nurse smiled sympathetically, checking the monitor, shining a small light into her eyes. That's a concussion talking. You will be sore for a few days. We will be keeping you overnight for observation, but you should make a full recovery. Jungkook hovered silently nearby, his presence both comforting and suffocating. When the nurse left, silence fell again. Wine fiddled with the edge of the blanket, avoiding his gaze. You don't have to stay, she said finally, though the words tasted bitter. I will be fine. Jungkook studied her, his jaw tightening. I know you will be fine, but I'm not leaving. Her heart gave traitorous flutter. She looked away, staring at the ceiling tiles as if they held answers. Jungkook, she hesitated, then forced the words out. It's been a year. I know, he said quietly. Why are you doing this? He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was low, steady. Because I still care, Vine, whether you want me or not. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to push him away, to remind him of the past, but her body was weak, her heart weaker still. And in the sterile quiet of hospital room, with the memory of shattered glass still fleshed in her mind, she found herself unable to say the words. Instead, she closed her eyes, turning her face away. I need to rest. Jungkook nodded, though she didn't see it. He settled back into the chair, silent and steady, a sentinel at her bedside. And as sleep pulled her under once more, one couldn't escape the thought that perhaps deep down she had never changed that emergency contact for a reason. The morning lights landed pale and cool through the hospital blinds. Wine stirred, groaned softly as she blinked awake. The dull ache in her ribs hasn't lessened much, and the pounding in her skull reminded her with merciless clarity that the accident hadn't been some nightmare. She shifted carefully against the pillows, wincing at the tug of the IV line. When her eyes finally adjusted, she noticed him again, Jungkook. He was still there. He was slumped in the chair beside her bed, his long frame folded awkwardly, held tilted to the side in an uncomfortable-looking angle. He had a shaved, faint stubble shadowed his jaw. His coat hung over the back of the chair, and a disposable coffee cup rested forgotten on the floor. For a moment, Wine simply stared. She couldn't reconcile it after everything. After a year of silence, here he was, keeping vigil like he had every right to. Her throat tightened with an emotion she didn't dare name. She shifted the blanket, rustling. Jungkook stared instantly, his eyes snapping open. It startled her, the way his gaze went straight to her, sharp and alert, as though he had been waiting for any sign of her movement. "You are awake," he said, his voice husky from sleep. Wine managed a small nod. "You are still here?" His mouth curved faintly, though it wasn't quite a smile. "I told you I wasn't leaving." She should have been annoyed, should have told him to go, to give her space, but instead she found herself oddly comforted. She hated admitting it, even to herself. "You look like hell," she murmured, her voice scratchy. He huffed a quiet laugh. "Takes one to know one." The air between them softened, just for a moment until the door swung open. "Wine?" Maya's voice was like a rush of wind, breaking the fragile bubble that had formed. Her best friend strode into the room, a blow of dark curls, oversized sweater, and wild concern etched up across her face. She dropped her tote bag on the chair opposite Jungkook's and rushed to Wine's side. "Oh my god, you scared me half to death." Maya carefully avoided the ivy line as she leaned in to hug her gently. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I had to hear from the hospital this morning when they confirmed visiting hours. I thought you..." Her voice cracked and she pulled back, blinking rapidly. "I'm okay," she soothed, though her voice was thin, bruised but not broken. "That's not the point," Maya snapped softly, her eyes glistening, then noticing Jungkook for the first time. Her expression hardened. "You?" she said flatly. Jungkook straightened, his posture taut. "Maya? What are you doing here?" Her tone was sharp, protective. Wine winced. "Maya? No, I mean it." Maya planted her hands on her hips, glaring. "You are the last person I expected to see, the last person I wanted to see here, if I'm being honest." Jungkook's jaw flexed, but he hadn't rise to the bite. "I'm here because the hospital called me. I'm still listed as her emergency contact." Maya's head snapped toward Wine. "Wait, what?" Wine felt heat flood her cheeks. She fiddled with the blanket, avoiding both their gazes. "I never got around to changing it." Maya gasped. "Never got around?" "Wine, it's been a year." "I know," she muttered. Jungkook's eyes softened slightly, but he stayed quiet, letting Maya's words hang heavy in the air. Maya shook her head in disbelief. "Out of everyone you could have put down, me, your parents, you left him? After everything?" Wine's thought tightened. "It's not like I planned for this to happen." "That's not the point." Maya's gaze flicked to Jungkook, sharp as glass. "What? You think this is some kind of sign? That fate threw you back together?" "Maya," she said sharply, though her own chest ached at the words. Jungkook finally spoke, his tone steady but low. "I'm not here because of fate. I'm here because she needed someone and I could not come." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line, clearly unconvinced. She turned back to Wine. "You should have changed it." Wine looked away, the sting of truth cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. Why hadn't she changed it? She had told herself countless times she would, but each time she would fill out paperwork she's passed. Something inside her had resisted, because deep down she knew Jungkook was the one person she could trust to show up, always, and now here he was. The silence stretched, heavy and awkward, until Maya finally exhaled sharply. "Fine, whatever. You are here, but don't think this changes anything." She grabbed her tote bag and yanked out a water bottle, pressing it to Wine's hands. "Drink," soloed. Wine obeyed, her hands trembling slightly. Jungkook sat quietly watching the exchange, a muscle ticking his jaw. The hours passed slowly. Doctors came and went, checking her with vitals, asking questions to ensure her memory was intact. Jungkook stayed. Maya stayed too, though her disapproval was palpable, radiating every time Jungkook shifted in his chair. At one point, when Maya left to grab coffee, Jungkook leaned forward. "She hates me." Wine's lips twitched. "She is protective." "She is right to be," he admitted, surprising her. His gaze was steady and flinching. "I hurt you, I know that." Her breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to brush past it, but the memories came rushing back, the fights, the loneliness, the feeling of being unseen, and yet also the laughter, the warmth, the love that had once filled her life so completely. She swallowed hard. "Jungkook." But before she could finish, Maya returned, breaking the moment. That night, after visiting hours ended, Maya finally left with a promise to return in the morning. The room grew quiet again, the dim glow of the monitor the only light. Jungkook remained. Wine turned her head toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really don't have to stay." His eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "I know, but I want to." Something in her chest cracked open at that. She closed her eyes, pretending to sleep, because she didn't know what else to do. But long after she drifted into restless dreams, Jungkook stayed exactly where he was, keeping watch over the woman he had once loved and maybe never stopped loving. Discharge papers were always a blur of medical jargon and clip instructions, and for Wine, they might as well have been written in another language. Her head still pounded, and the bruises that mottled her ribs made even the smallest movements a careful calculation. The nurse walked her through the list anyway: pain medication every 6 hours, rest, avoid strenuous activity, follow up in 1 week. Wine nodded at all the right places, but her eyes glazed over. It was Jungkook who leaned forward, listening intently, asking clarifying questions. "Any specific warning signs I should look for with the concussion? Should she be waking up every few hours tonight? Are there mobility restrictions we need to watch out for?" "We." The word caught Wine off guard, sending a ripple of something warm and unwanted through her chest. She opened her mouth to object, to remind him that he didn't need to be involved, but the nurse answered first. "No waking every hour unless she shows signs of worsening confusion," the nurse replied, "and yes, limited activity for at least a week. Someone should stay nearby for the first few days." Her gaze lied to Wine, with the kind of look nurses gave when they knew their patients were stubborn. "Don't try to do this alone." Wine forced a small smile. "I'll manage." The nurse's eyebrows rose slightly, as if she knew better, but she didn't argue. She left them with a packet of papers and instruction to stop at the pharmacy on the way out. Jungkook stood. "I will get the car." "I can call a cab," she muttered automatically. "You are not taking a cab home from the hospital," he said, his tone leaving no room for debate. He grabbed her overnight bag before she could protest further. Maya had offered to take her home, of course, but she had shifted the bakery and promised to stop by later. And the Wine wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence. The truth was, she didn't have the strength, not right now, so she let him help. The world outside the hospital seemed too bright, too alive, as Jungkook guided her carefully towards his car. The rain had cleared overnight, leaving the sheets slick and shimmering under the morning sun. She squinted against the light, her body heavy and her mind foggy. Jungkook opened the passenger door for her. Careful, watch your head. The small, familiar gesture tugged at something inside her. She slid into the seat, inhaling the faint scent of leather and cedar that clung to his car. Memories hit her unbidden. Late night drives with music blaring, his hand resting casually on her knee, the way they used to argue about playlists but always ended up singing together anyway. She pushed the thoughts away as he closed the door and rounded the hood. The drive was quiet. Jungkook kept glancing at her as if to make sure she was still breathing, still upright. She stared out of the window, the city blurring past. Her body ached with every bump in the road, but it wasn't just her body. Her chest ached too with confusion, with memories, with the sharp reminder of how easily he still fit into the empty spaces of her life. When they pulled up outside her apartment building, Jungkook parked and turned to her. "Wait here, I will help you out." "I'm not an invalid," she grumbled, though she knew she probably looked like one. He smirked faintly. "Try telling that to the way you are wincing every time you breathe." She shot him a glare, but it softened when he opened her door and offered his arm. Stubbornness vied with practicality. In the end, practicality won. She slid her hand into the crook of his elbow, allowing him to steady her as they climbed the stairs. Inside, her apartment greeted her with its usual clutter. A stack of unopened mail on the counter, shoes kicked haphazardly by the door, a throw blanket still crumpled on the couch from the last night she had sat there watching TV. It looked the same, but she didn't feel the same. Jungkook helped her ease onto the couch, then disappeared into the kitchen without asking. She heard cabinets opening, the clink of glasses. A moment later, he returned with a glass of water. "You should take your meds," he said, holding it out. She narrowed her eyes. "You are bossy." "Someone has to be." The corner of her mouth twitched despite herself. She accepted the glass, swallowing the pills with difficulty. He hovered until she set it down, then sank into the armchair across from her, watching her with those steady grey eyes. The silence stretched heavy with things unsaid. Finally, wine broke in. Don't have to babysit me, you know." Jungkook leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I know, but I want to make sure you are okay." Her chest tightened. Why? The question hung between them, raw and jagged. She hadn't meant to sound so vulnerable, but it slipped out anyway. His gaze softened, but he didn't look away, because, despite everything, "I still care. I can't turn that off, Wine." Her breath caught. She wanted to scoff, to remind him of their breakup, of all the nights she cried herself to sleep after he walked away, but the sincerity in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she looked down at her hands, twisting the blanket in her lap. "Caring didn't keep us together before," she whispered. Jungkook's silence was answer enough. The next few days blurred into a rhythm she hadn't expected. Jungkook stopped by each morning with groceries, insisting she eat something more substantial than toast. He tidied her kitchen, fixed the squeaky hinge on her bedroom door, even refilled the soap dispenser in her bathroom. It was infuriating, it was comforting, it was both, and it left her head spinning. Sometimes they talked about neutral things, like the bakery where Maya worked or the renovations at his firm. Other times, silence stretched between them, not entirely uncomfortable but heavy with all the words they weren't saying. All night, when the apartment grew quiet, Wine lay awake replaying the conversations, the way his hand had brushed hers when he passed her a plate, the way his voice softened when he asked how her health felt, It was too easy to slip back into the rhythm of us. Too easy to forget the cracks that had split them apart, and that terrified her. On the fourth day, Maya showed up unannounced, bursting into the apartment with a bag of pastries and a scarf. Okay, she announced, setting the bag on. We need to talk. Vine raised an eyebrow from the couch. Good morning to you too. Maya ignored her, plopping down on the cafe table directly across from her. So, Jungkook, why is he here every day like you are suddenly staring in some cheesy romance movie? Vine groaned. Maya, no, seriously, you can't just let him walk back into your life like the last year didn't happen. Vine pressed her fingers to her temples. I didn't ask him to, he just shows up. And you let him. Maya countered. Vine opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because Maya wasn't wrong. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted slowly. Maya's expression softened, though her eyes were still wary. Vine, you have been through a lot. You are vulnerable right now. Don't confuse gratitude with something else. Vine swallowed hard. What if it's not just gratitude? The silence that followed was deafening. That night, Jungkook cooked dinner pasta with too much garlic, just the way she used to like. As they ate, Vine found herself laughing at something he said. The sound startling her as much as it startled him. For a fleeting moment, it felt like nothing had changed. But when she caught his gaze lingering on her across her table, something deep inside her shifted. She realized with a terrifying clarity that the walls she had built around her heart were beginning to crack, and once again, Jungkook was the one standing inside. The first real argument since the hospital came on a Wednesday night. Vine had insisted she could manage the laundry basket herself. She had taken 2 steps before the ache in her ribs doubled her over, the basket clattering to the floor. Jungkook was at her side in an instant, his hand on her arm. See, his voice was sharp with You are not supposed to be lifting anything heavier than a mug. I'm not helpless, Jungkook, she snapped, yanking her arm away. I didn't say you are helpless. I said you are hurt. And I said I can manage. Her voice rose, brittle. God, you always do this. You swoop in and take over like I can't do anything on my own. The words were out before she could stop them, echoing in the small apartment. They both froze because they weren't really arguing about laundry. Jungkook's expression tightened, pain flickering across his features. He stepped back, dragging a hand through his hair. Is that what you think I'm doing? Again? Vine's just heaved. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The room felt too small, too heavy with all the words they had left unsaid. Finally, she whispered, That's why we broke up, isn't it? The silence stretched. Jungkook's shoulders sagged as he exhaled slowly, the fight draining out of him. Yeah, he admitted, I guess it is. They ended up on the couch, the laundry basket forgotten. The weight of their history settled between them like a third presence. Jungkook leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I was so focused on building a future, he said quietly, on getting the promotions, the projects, the money. I thought I was doing it for us, for you. But somewhere along the way, I stopped actually being with you. Vine's throat tightened. She remembered nights waiting for him to come home, dinners gone cold, the loneliness of lying in bed beside a man whose mind was always somewhere else. I felt invisible, she admitted, her voice raw, like it didn't matter unless I fit into your schedule. His head dropped, shame etched into his posture. I know, and I hate that I made you feel that way, but I didn't know how to stop. I thought if I just work harder, push harder, it would all be worth it. That you would see how much I loved you in the things I was trying to build. Her eyes burned. I didn't want things, Jungkook. I wanted you. The words cracked between them, jagged and unflinching. Jungkook lifted his gaze as for the first time she saw his regret laid bare. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have been there. I should have chosen you, not the job, not the deadlines. You. Her breath shuddered out. She wanted to hold on to the wall she had built, but the sincerity in his eyes chipped her at resolve. And you, he said softly. Why didn't you change it? She blinked. Change what? Your emergency contact? His voice was steady, but his hands clenched together. An year, Vine. You had plenty of time. Why me? The question hung heavy in the air. She could have lied, she could have shrugged it off, blamed laziness or oversight, but the truth pressed against her ribs, demanding release. Because, she whispered, her voice breaking, no matter how much I wanted to hate you, I always knew you would show up. His breath caught. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling before she could stop them. I tried to put other names down, Maya, my mom, anyone else, but every time I went to sign, I hesitated because deep down, I didn't trust anyone the way I trusted you, even after everything, even when I saw I would never forgive you. You were the one person I knew would come if I needed you. Jungkook's jaw tightened, his own eyes glassy. Slowly, carefully, he reached out, covering her trembling hand with his. And I always will, he said hoarsely. No matter what happens between us, I will always come when you need me. The warmth of his hand seeped into hers, grounding her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Vine whispered, But what about when I don't just need you? What if I still want you? The conversation hung between them, terrifying in its honesty. Jungkook's grip tightened just slightly. Then, I will tell you the truth, he said, his voice trembling. I never stopped wanting you, Vine. Not for a single day. Her chest constricted, hope and fear colliding violently inside her. But how do we know it will be different this time? She asked, tears spilling freely now. How do we know we won't just end up right back when we were me feeling invisible, you drowning in work? Jungkook swallowed hard. Because I'm different now. I had to lose you to realize that nothing I built, nothing I achieved meant anything without you in it. I don't care about the next big promotion. I don't care about being in work. I care about showing up. I every day for you. His voice cracked, raw and unguarded. I don't want to be just the name on your emergency contact list. Vine, I want to be your every day. I want another chance to love you the way you deserve. The room blurred through her tears. She stretched his face, desperate for any hint of falsehood, but found none. Only sincerity, only love. Her heart pounded. She thought of the accident, of the way her world had nearly ended in a single violent moment, of how he had been the one by her side when she opened her eyes. Maybe it wasn't fate. Maybe it was simply truth, the kind she had been too afraid to face. Slowly she slid closer until their knees brushed. Jungkook's eyes widened, hope sparking in their depths. Vine, he whispered. She cupped his face with trembling hands, her voice barely audible. Then prove it, stay, not because you have to, because you choose to. Her breath shuddered out, always. And then his lips were on hers, gentle but fierce, with all the words they hadn't spoken. The kiss was different than before, not rushed, not careless. It was reverent, patient, the kind of kiss that spoke of second chances and promises, made silently in the space between heartbeats. When they finally pulled apart, wine rested her forehead against his, her tears mingling with laughter. I guess I don't need to update my emergency contact after all. Jungkook chuckled, his thumb brushing her cheek. Not unless you want to add husband someday. Her heart stumbled at the word instead of a warm glow in her chest. For the first time in a year, the future didn't feel like something to dread. It felt like something they could build together. In the weeks that followed, Jungkook kept showing up not just in the big ways but the small ones. Morning coffee, late night laughter, quiet evenings curled on the couch. He didn't just promise change, he lived it. And Wine, for the first time in a long time, let herself believe. Because sometimes the person you call in an emergency isn't just the one who shows up when you're broken. Sometimes they are the one you realize you still want beside you always.